A stranger steps off a tired horse with a folded deed in his coat and a past stitched into his bones. The town clock isn't working, but everyone feels the moment anyway. He's not running fast, not hiding loud, just moving careful, like a man who learned that attention gets people killed. The paper says the land is his now, cheap for a reason, and the looks from the boardwalk say the same thing. He didn't come west to be brave. He came to stop remembering, to live where names don't matter and questions die in the heat. He passes the saloon without stopping, ignores the preacher's eyes, and keeps walking until the building's thin and the dirt opens up. That's when he sees them. 3 women waiting where his land begins, standing still like they've been there a long time, as if the land itself asked them to hold the line. They don't wave, and they don't smile. One holds a ledger close to her chest, another shades her eyes. The youngest stands a half-step back, fingers worrying the seam of her sleeve. He slows because instinct tells him this moment will decide something permanent. He feels the weight of the rifle across his back and hates it. He hates what it makes people think. He stops at the fence, boots planted, dust settling around his ankles. The tallest woman meets his eyes without flinching. Her voice is even, almost kind when she says it. "You should know how things work out here." A pause, long enough for him to wonder if he's being sized up or spared. "Sex is part of living here." The words aren't thrown, they're offered. The youngest stiffens, afraid he'll take it wrong, afraid he'll reach for steel. He doesn't. His jaw tightens. And for a breath, he sees a different place, a different night, and a promise he once broke by surviving. He swallows it down and waits for more. They don't explain right away. They let the quiet do the work. He smells dry grass and iron, hears a fly buzzing against the fence wire. He thinks of the land he bought because no one wanted it, because men had tried and failed and left bones behind in stories. He thinks this might be another test, another lie wrapped in plain words. The tallest woman finally nods toward the deed. "Paper doesn't keep a place alive," she says. "Work does." The one with the ledger adds, "We've worked it. We'll keep working it." The youngest glances at his hands again. He notices the way her breath catches when he shifts his weight. Fear, clean and honest. It hurts more than the accusation. He sets the rifle down, slow, careful, resting it against the fence so it's clear. "I didn't come to take," he says. His voice sounds older than he feels. "I came to stay quiet." The tallest woman studies him as if weighing the truth by how little he's trying to sell it. They tell him their names, simple names that belong to the land now, and they tell him the rules the same way you tell a man where the well is and how deep it runs. Nothing fancy, no tricks. The land needs hands. The house needs mending. Men who pass through don't last. They don't want promises. They want honesty that can stand up to winter. The line about living here isn't a bargain. It's a warning about loneliness and choice and the cost of pretending otherwise. He listens, nodding once, twice. Inside, something tightens. He remembers a woman who looked at him like he was already gone. It remembers the sound of a door closing because fear had taught her what he hadn't yet learned. He keeps his eyes on the fence, on the grain of the wood. "I can work," he says. "I won't scare you." The youngest looks at him then, really looks, and the fear doesn't vanish, but it eases, like a knot loosened a fraction. The town watches from a distance as they talk. Stories are being written without ink. He feels the pressure of being measured by what he hasn't done yet. The ledger woman mentions the well, how it runs shallow in August, how they've hauled water farther than most men would bother. He nods, already counting the days, the repairs, the blisters he'll earn. He asks where to sleep. The answer comes quick. The barn, until trust decides otherwise. Fair. He respects that. When they turn to go, the youngest lingers, torn between manners and worry. She opens her mouth, closes it, then says, "We don't need saving." He meets her eyes, steady. "I know," he says. "I need a place to be useful." That seems to surprise her. She nods once, sharp, like she's bracing herself for hope and doesn't like the feeling. Night falls without ceremony. He eats cold beans, cleans his rifle because habit is hard to kill, then stops and sets it aside. He doesn't like what it says about him anymore. The barn smells of hay and old rain. He lies awake, listening to the land settle, to distant voices he can't place. He thinks of the sentence that met him at the fence and turns it over until it loses its edge. He realizes it wasn't about him at all. It was about surviving with the truth in daylight. He respects that. In the dark, fear taps his ribs anyway. Had he seen how fast a misunderstanding becomes a grave? He promises himself he'll leave at the first sign of danger to them. It's a promise that costs him sleep. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Morning comes with work. He mends fence posts, hands roughening, shoulders warming. The ledger woman brings water and doesn't hover. The tallest woman checks the line with an appraising eye and says nothing when he does it right. The youngest watches from the porch, pretending not to. He keeps his movements open, predictable. He doesn't like the way relief feels like something he hasn't earned. By noon, he's cut his palm and binds it with a strip of cloth without fuss. He knows pain. It's a language he learned young. When he looks up, he catches the youngest's eyes again. Fear flickers. Then something else. Curiosity, maybe. He looks away first. He won't be the man who takes more than he gives. Not here, not now. By evening, the land feels different. Not friendly. Honest. He stands at the fence again, looking out at the town that already feels farther away. He understands why the words had to be said out loud. Silence breeds lies, and lies cost lives. He thinks about the deed in his pocket, and the work in his hands, and the women who drew a line without raising a fist. He knows this place will ask for everything he has, and then ask again. He also knows that for the first time in a long while, the asking feels fair. And somewhere inside that careful, guarded chest, a quieter thought takes root. If he stays alive here, it won't be by hiding. It will be by choosing every day not to become the thing people fear when they see a gun. Time on the land didn't move by the clock. It moved by what hurt and what held. The first week taught him which boards complained when stepped on, which fence posts leaned like tired men, and how silence could say more than questions ever would. He kept to his work and his word. He slept in the barn with the smell of hay and old wood in his lungs, waking before light because habit refused to loosen its grip. He learned the women's rhythms without asking. The tallest one rose early and walked the property line like a sentinel, checking gates, counting what might break next. The one with the ledger measured everything, grain, water, time, because nothing out here forgave carelessness. And the youngest moved softly, carrying grief the way some people carry a child, careful not to drop it, unsure when to set it down, She was the one who watched him closest, not because she wanted to, but because fear makes the eyes busy. She'd lost her husband 6 months earlier, the fever taking him so fast the house still felt warm with his absence. She believed men changed when land and need pressed in, believed kindness could turn sharp without warning. When the stranger bent to his work, she flinched at sudden sounds, at the scrape of metal, at the sight of his hands. He noticed. He hated that he caused it. He learned to announce himself with small noises, a cough, a word, anything to keep surprise from curdling into terror. He learned that trust isn't asked for, it's built from repetition. They talked more as days stacked up, not about the past, about practical things. Where the well dipped lowest, which trail flooded first, how the winter wind found its way into every seam if you let it. He spoke when spoken to and kept his eyes honest. The tallest woman asked him once, flat and without ornament, if he'd killed before. He didn't dodge it. Yes, he said, when there wasn't another way. She nodded, accepting the answer for what it was. The ledger woman asked if he'd leave when things got hard. He shrugged. Hard is familiar. That earned a thin smile. The youngest said nothing, but her shoulders loosened by a degree. Then the riders came. Not announced, not dramatic, just dust on the horizon at the wrong hour, moving too fast to be passing through. He saw it first from the fence line and felt his body choose before his mind did. He ran for the house, breath cutting his ribs, or shouting a warning that came out hoarse. The women didn't panic. They moved like people who had practiced not panicking. Doors barred, the ledger tucked away. The youngest froze for a heartbeat, eyes wide, then followed the tallest inside. He grabbed his rifle and hated that relief came with it. He took a position that put his back to the house and the land in front of him, because that's what protection looks like when it's real. The riders weren't interested in him. They knew the women. They called out old jokes, old threats, promises that meant harm. The youngest pressed her hands over her ears, breath stuttering. He felt something in his chest break cleanly and settle into resolve. He shouted once, clear and final, that the land was taken and trouble would cost them. Laughter answered. Then a shot cracked, sharp as a snapped bone. The pain bloomed in his shoulder, hot and immediate, stealing his breath. He stayed on his feet because staying mattered. He returned fire with care, not rage, aiming to end the choice without ending lives if he could. When it was over, dust hung heavy and the riders were gone, dragging a wounded pride and one wounded man with them. He slid down against the fence, the world narrowing to sound and heat. They carried him inside. The tallest tore cloth with steady hands. The ledger woman boiled water and spoke instructions like she was counting grain. The youngest shook so hard she had to sit, then forced herself up because leaving felt worse. She pressed a clean cloth to his shoulder, apologizing under her breath as if the blood were her fault. He told her it wasn't. He told her to breathe. He told her he was still here. The bullet hadn't killed him. It had chosen him, and that mattered. Through the night he drifted and returned, tethered by pain and voices. He heard the youngest say she was afraid he'd wake angry. He woke gentle instead. It surprised her enough that she laughed once, then cried because laughter had been waiting a long time. Recovery taught them all patience. He couldn't work like before, and that made him restless. The women wouldn't let him push it. Living here means staying alive, the tallest said. The ledger woman added, alive men work longer. The youngest sat with him during the long hours, reading aloud from nothing in particular, telling him small stories about the land, about her husband's hands and how they used to fit together at night. She was afraid he'd disappear the way the other men had, through leaving or through death. He told her the truth when she asked why he'd stood in front of the rifles. "Because I said I wouldn't scare you," he said, "and because running would have." The answer lodged somewhere deep and stayed. Weeks passed. Strength returned in increments. Trust did, too. One evening, when the pain eased enough for him to sit on the porch, she asked him his name. He gave it. It sounded ordinary in the air, which pleased him. He asked hers. She said it, then corrected the way he pronounced it, smiling despite herself. The moment felt fragile, like glass warmed in the hand. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. The space between them held more than touch would have. She admitted she'd been sure he would kill her the day they met. He didn't argue. He nodded, owning the truth of what he looked like to someone who'd learned fear the hard way. "I won't," he said, not as a promise, but as a fact he intended to keep. The town changed its tune after that, not loudly, just enough. A nod here, a tool lent there. Respect earned by standing when it counted has a way of traveling faster than lies. The land responded too. Repairs held. The well gave. The house felt less hollow at night. The phrase from the fence lost its edge and gained a shape. It wasn't about taking from each other. It was about choosing connection in a place that punished pretense. When he finally returned to work, slower but steadier, the youngest watched him without flinching. Fear didn't vanish, but it learned where to sit. 6 months after the fever took her husband, she set down her grief in a new place. Not abandoned, honored. She told him she didn't know what she wanted yet. He told her he wasn't in a hurry. Marriage wasn't discussed like a bargain. It arrived the way weather does, after signs you learned to read. When it came, it was quiet. No speeches, just a decision made together in daylight because daylight keeps lies small. The other two stayed, family by choice, bound by work and truth. The land held them all, scarred and useful. If you were there, if you'd carried a past sharp enough to cut, would you have stood when fear asked you to run? Would you trust someone who looked like danger until they proved otherwise? Thanks for staying to the end. Where are you watching from? The years that followed didn't announce themselves. They arrived quietly, so stitched together by mornings that began with work and nights that ended with listening to the house breathe. Time softened the sharpest edges, not by erasing them, but by giving them purpose. The land changed under their hands, fence lines straightened, the well deepened enough to last the dry months. The barn stopped sounding lonely at night. He woke beside her now, careful at first, like a man unsure whether the ground would hold his weight. She slept light, still, the way grief teaches a body to be ready. When he stirred too fast, her eyes opened. When he reached for her hand, she let him, fingers curling like they were relearning a language they hadn't used in a long time. Marriage didn't turn him into a different man. It asked him to be the same one every day. That was harder. He learned that love here wasn't loud. It was water set out before thirst. It was noticing when her breath changed and asking why. It was leaving the rifle by the door unless there was a reason not to. The tallest woman teased him once for how gentle he'd become. He answered without heat. "I always was." She believed him because she'd seen the proof. The ledger woman kept counting because someone had to. The youngest, his wife now, kept planting because life insisted on returning when given half a chance. There were nights fear tried to reclaim its old seat. A sound outside, a memory that came back wrong. On those nights, she'd wake and feel his heart racing. She'd say his name once, steady. He'd anchor to it. He told her about the promise he broke long ago, about surviving when someone else didn't. He told her because keeping it locked had only made it heavier. And she listened without trying to fix it. When she spoke of her husband, she did it without apology. Love didn't erase what came before. It made room for it. That understanding settled between them like a rule they both agreed to keep. The town learned their rhythm and left them to it. Children came by sometimes, drawn by the garden and the idea that safety could exist beyond walls. He fixed a wheel for a neighbor. She taught a girl how to read. The land held their days and gave back what it could. When winter came hard, they met it together. When sickness passed through, they nursed and waited and didn't look away. 6 months became a year. A year became proof. The phrase from the fence faded into a truth that needed no explaining. Living here meant choosing each other without lies. He never forgot the fear in her eyes the first day. She never forgot the way he set the rifle down. Those memories didn't haunt them. They guided them. When arguments came, and they did, they kept their voices low and their words honest. When he faltered, she reminded him of who he'd decided to be. When she froze at a sudden noise, he stood where she could see him. Redemption didn't arrive as forgiveness from strangers. It arrived as mornings that felt earned. One evening, as the light thinned and the house settled, she asked him if he ever wished he'd kept moving west. He thought about it, the answer forming without hurry. "No," he said. "I found the place that asked me to stay." She smiled, small and real, and leaned into him. The land outside was quiet, not empty, full of what they'd put into it. If this story left you thinking about fear you've carried, or trust you've been asked to give, tell us how it made you feel. What would you have done if you were in her place, or his? Thanks for staying to the end. Where are you watching from?